And we start with the panel on religion, conversion, and caste, moderated by Gauri Vishwanathan. Gauri?
Thank you all for coming this morning. The first panel for today, and actually the only panel, is on religion and caste. And in setting up this panel, we begin with the understanding that Ambedkar had very carefully deliberated his conversion to Buddhism, taking 20 years to actually convert and then lead one of the largest mass conversions in history. And he also used those 20 years to study various religions, not only Buddhism, but also Islam, Sikhism, and Christianity. So that 20-year period was absolutely crucial for Ambedkar in both undertaking this very serious scholarly study of world religions, but also to totally psych out particularly the Hindu communities who were very anxious about his threat, as they put it, to convert and thereby take large masses of people away from the Hindu fold. Ambedkar's search for a moral framework, which we've been talking about over the last 2 days, and that this search for a moral framework to resist caste oppression refused any possibility of non-religious alternatives, which some of his more atheistic, Marxist supporters were urging him to think about. And Ambedkar remained entirely skeptical of the promises of emancipatory legislation if it was a purely formal act without any particular moral impact. So in this panel, there are 3 large areas that the 4 speakers intend to address. First of all, historically, in the articulation of Dalit consciousness, there is a tension between Dalit identity and casteless identity. The question that some of the speakers will be asking is, how does this tension play out within ostensibly non-Brahminical religious communities? How, moreover, does the Dalit project of conversion out of Brahminical traditions articulate with the project of reconstructing an indigenous past? Another set of questions relates to the act of conversion itself. What are the reasons for Dalit conversion or non-conversion to the religious tradition that each of the speakers on this panel studies? Why conversion at all when there are other non-religious alternatives to social and political transformation? What emancipatory possibilities are offered by religion that are not available or at best limited under a secular regime? And I think yesterday there were some questions that asked this very fundamental question about religion for liberating purposes. And then finally, the last set of questions deals with to what extent and in what ways do the categories of the state and governmentality generally structure or determine the religious landscape of Dalit India? To what extent, for instance, does withholding scheduled caste status from Dalit Muslims and Christians while granting scheduled caste status to Dalit Sikhs since 1956 and Buddhists since 1990 and Hindus influence the nature of relations both within religious communities and between religiously different Dalit communities? In categorizing the units of Indian society, is the state playing a role that is essentially neo-colonial or secular progressive or Brahminical? The order that we've decided on for today's panel, I hope will emulate Ambedkar's own very deliberate study of various religions in this conversion process. And we've tried to achieve Ambedkar's own thought process by first through this very deep, speculative, theoretical interest in the very category of religion. And of course, this is the prime question that addresses many Ambedkar scholars. Why religion for political transformation? And as Ambedkar developed these conceptual frameworks for the relevance of religion in his political project, he also undertook deep empirical historical studies of various religions, which I have already mentioned, include Christianity, Islam, and Sikhism. So the order of this panel attempts to emulate that thought process, and so therefore we will begin with Gyana Aloysius, who is an independent scholar in New Delhi. And Aloysius he has served as the Ford Foundation Professor of Dalit Studies at the Academy of Third World Studies in New Delhi. And he's also been a visiting professor at the University of Hyderabad, the University of Heidelberg, and the University of Delhi. He has published numerous papers, and I'm not going to mention all of them. But I do want to mention his important books, which include Nationalism Without a Nation in India, which was published, I think, in 1999, right? And then he has also edited various collections. Most recently, I think, or maybe this is not so recent, but I thought I would mention Lakshmi Narasu's Religion of the Modern Buddhist, which was published in 2002, right? And Dr. Aloysius has extensive experience working with the tribals and scheduled castes of Jharkhand, including trade union organization among the mining, construction, forest, and beauty workers in Singhbhum district, Bihar. And he has also set up and run non-formal education centers among the Ho people. And he has set up the Tribal Documentation Center. I will introduce the other speakers just before they speak, but the order that we will follow is Dr. Aloysius first, and then Rajkumar Hans, and then Nate Roberts, and finally Masood. So, Aloysius, would you like to begin?
Friends, I appreciate this invitation to this seminar. I am grateful particularly to those who literally labored to transport me from New Delhi to New York, and I'm grateful to all of you. Well, long ago, Professor Gopal Guru wrote an essay, a rather neglected one, where he tried to explore the academic division of labor as theoretical Brahmins and Shudra empiricists. When Shudra scholars are supposed to do empirical work, slave labor, collect data, and so on, and Brahmins will sit on that and theorize, means ideologize, you see. And I have been battling that, try to say there has been an implicit theory in all this empirical work done by the Shudras, and an attempt is to extricate that. That is an attempt here. But Madam has severely said 15 minutes. So I could maybe send a telegram, long telegram. And what you will make out of this, we will have to see. You see, first, this has three parts. First, I make some historical observations, and then I try to flesh out some larger implications, theoretical or speculative or whatever it is, and then discuss some of the questions put forward in front of the panel by the organizers. The very first point that should sink into our consciousness is that during the colonial period, there has been a pervasive, percolative, though uneven, mass movements by the hitherto relegated castes and communities across the subcontinent. It was a pervasive phenomenon. Now, historiography would say, yeah, there were some Periyar there and Ambedkar there, the rest are all nationalist. No, it is not. It's a problem of historiography, not history. And this has structural implications. Now, M.N. Srinivas, known for his Sanskritization and so on, I try to pick up something interesting from him, has suggested that it was as though they are no longer inhabiting a prison house. These lower caste atoms, The imagery is very important. Breaking down the Bastille or something like that. It was not, of course, of that dimension, but still there was something. The second thing is, what was the context in which this took place? The context was sudden and also equally pervasive subalternization of the numerous communities who came to be later called backward and Dalit and minorities, etc. They came to be called so later. It was a sudden subalternization and corresponding coming to hegemony of the Brahmanical. Brahmanical both as an ideology and also the human agency of the Brahmanical. Now there are various ways of describing this Brahmanical, middle classes, elite and all that. I try all that, but then I find the most that approximates this is just to say Brahmanical and explain that. You see? Now this Brahmanical, I will not going to explain now. The Brahmanical came as the new middle class, the leading class as Ambedkar calls, to set up the new political economy, civil society, etc. On the one hand. On the other hand, the same Brahmanical came and presented itself as the Hinduism under the colonial period. The core of Hinduism, the Brahmanical thing. So the Hinduism notion was not only a residual notion of minusing Muslims and Christians, the rest of the country is Hinduism, a descriptive phenomena, but also a prescriptive notion. That Hindu means one has to abide by certain things and so on. See, both the areas, both the secular as well as the sacred had come up. Now this is what has been mentioned again by M.N. Srinivas. I have put it in is inimitable insensitivity to power differentials within society. He says Varna became popular under colonialism. Okay. Now this a kind of running away, smashing of the prison house by the so-called lower caste also had two dimensions. One is they were trying to appropriate the new opportunity structure, education, employment, political representation, and so on. And simultaneously, they were also constructing new new religious canopies, religious roofs. Now, we are accustomed to say that these people are not sufficiently secularized, sufficiently rationalized. That's why they still hang on to that, religious thing and so on. On the other hand, you're going through all this, surveying all this, you would find it was a very, very conscious and consistent attempt to construct a new religious canopies in order to match their newly emerging existential position in political economy and civil society and so on. The sigh of the oppressed. You see? So they were reconstructing a religion that will express the aspiration as well as their own ambitions within the sacred realm itself. Now, obviously, in keeping with the consonance with the genius of the land, these are plural and ranged from reinterpreting Vedanta, where you say the dualism is wrong, and then you practice dualism. This is an old Sankaracharya itself supposed to have learnt it from one of the Pulaya caste at that time. Okay. From there on, right to the end, we will have people simply running away from Hinduism to Christianity and Islam and so on, with a lot of other varieties thrown in between, various combinations and so on and so forth, according to their own wherewithal and the social capital they had and so on. Now, despite all this plurality and diversity and multiplicity of attempts, there are some basic qualities common across the land, despite the fact that it was not a coordinated effort, expressive of the existential situation of all these communities. The first, of course, is the simultaneity of this both secular and sacred. We always find it all over across the place, across the subcontinent. Every group tried to set up some similar sacred canopies according to their own efforts in political economy. Second aspect was that they claimed all these religious canopies they were constructing were a continuity with their own past. Continuity with their own past. And this is a genuine continuity, not a new fangled, imitation of the West or, British abetting them to change over religion and so on, which was Vivekananda's comment on this. They all claimed that we are a continuity with our own ancient tradition. And the third, which is the most important, I'll be working on that, is all these religious canopies, very different and diversified they were all, they had the core component was embedding rational sociality. Rational sociality within this very concept of religion itself. Within the very concept of religion itself. Any religion in modern times, if it is to be meaningful or it is to be worth the name it has, should incorporate a humanism, an inclusive, rational humanism. Now, it is this experience of a vast number of people thinking of themselves in continuity, and all the expressions obviously were not even. Some were clear, some were not so clear, some were, just having an idea, some were elaborate, etc. It is all these are being summed up by Ambedkar, formulates it, interprets it, and offers it to the public as his philosophy of religion. Philosophy of religion. You see? So his immediate, he calls his predecessors as Buddha and Kabir and others. But immediately he also had Ayodhidasar from the south and Lakshmi Narasu also he wrote in English as his predecessors. He wrote two important books. One is Philosophy of Hinduism, where he deconstructs, and Buddha and his Dhamma, where he reconstructs. You see? These both go together. Without deconstruction, any discussion on this reconstruction will be only partial and it will dissort. So any resistance movement, unless it has a reference point, the contextual situation of the dominance, it is not, we will be only looking at a Dalit movement, a reservation, what are its dynamics, what are its deficiencies, etc., etc. But we wouldn't know how it is being determined, decided, shaped, and sized by the dominance itself. That is the importance of the context. Now, before I sort of going on to this discussion, we like to say the Dalits or the generally Dalit subalterns and so on, lower caste, what they came to be called the lower caste, they did have a vision, a coherent vision of a total reality. This is what I am trying to make out. Okay? They had a very specific idea of what modernity means. What modernity means. And it is not very different from what the scholars in a very high-flaunting language and so on they say. All discussions on modernity revolve around rationality. But then it will be bureaucratic rationality, instrumental rationality, metaphysical rationality, etc., etc. But a Dalit and a lower subaltern groups will find it as a social rationality, ethical rationality. I would rather prefer rational sociality. You see? Now, it is all the other aspects of the modernity will fall as consequences. Now, the entire mass has emerged as equal. We need to have a bureaucratic rationality, etc., in order to technology and so on. It has to come out and serve the basically social rationality. Now, this social rationality calls for a power reconstruction. Some people who are having privileges, they lose their privileges, others try to get it. It is a power relocation. Power relocation. Therefore, it will be contested, and therefore there will be ideology working against it, and so on and so forth. You see? Now, the whole core idea is that men and women look different. On their differences, social polity should be constructed was the pre-modern insight. The new rational insight is, despite the fact men look different and women look different, they're short and long and dark and gray and so on, there is a basic worth of human beings is the same, and it's on that social rationality has to be built up. You see, this is the basically the core idea. Second insight these people brought in their own articulations was, much against the colonial assertions and Orientalist assertions, that India is not a singular entity, India is not an organically developed society, nor that it is a spiritual society. You see? India is a society where there has been a conflict from the beginning, multiple traditions overimposing on one another and so on, and finally it is as materialist as anybody else. Their own strength is to trace what has been called the Sramanic tradition. Sramanic tradition, Buddhism, Jainism, and there is a number of other things, whose basic insight was, reality should not be taken as it is given, social reality. The is has to be changed into what ought to be. You see? Deny it, reconstruct it, call upon to live the human as it ought to be. The distinction between is and ought, and the struggle to reach the ought as the ideal. You see? And that has been embedded in their discovery within cultures. Now, more specifically to religion when it comes to, the idea is, you see, religion doesn't disappear in modernity, secularization and so on. But there is some amount of secularization, but basic process is that religion requires democratization. Everybody can read Bible directly and interpret. You don't need intermediaries. The authoritative dimension is being done away with, and that you are called upon to embed the process of multiple process of democratization within the very heart of religion. Within the very heart of religion. If religion has to be meaningful and so address the modern existential problems. The fact is, religion means deep conviction, moral conviction. It's not faith or, where tolerant religions or anything you can believe in and all that. It's a conviction. It's a conviction. And the conviction held sacred. If the conviction is not held sacred, any amount of new changes in the secular realm cannot be, it will never operate. When your deep conviction is in contrary to what is formulated as constitutions, etc., and so on, it is not going to work. You see, on this template, I want to discuss actually a little more, but it can follow in the thing. The present dilemma of the Dalit subaltern movement is identity or anonymity. This I have been saying. Now, the valorization of identity indiscriminately, setting it up higher, and then identity trumps hierarchy, identity trumps discrimination, etc. All these are elite formulation of Dalit subaltern aspirations. There is an equal aspiration for anonymity as much as for identity. And very often identity is taken up in order to reach anonymity. In order to reach anonymity. Therefore, one should not confuse postmodernist identities with the Dalit aspirations to identity. There can be a lot of things can go on, but there's nothing except the last point. I will finish this. In the construction of religion, you have the very core. Ambedkar constructed a particular religion, Buddha and his Dhamma. But if you see the very core of that religion, it constitutes universality. It constitutes universality. The particularist articulation of Dalits, if you want to interpret it insightfully, not in a very positivism, see what you call manifestos of political parties and so on, if you intuitively interpret it, their very particularity consists in approximation and an aspiration to reach universality. So if someone wants to go beyond that particularity in religion, for example, Buddha and his Dhamma. Buddha and his Dhamma is nothing but except a rational sociality explained and everybody accepts. If someone goes beyond that with some sacred and other worship, etc., it's their problem, individual's problem. You see? But the basic thing that the demands is that these should embed rational sociality. Now, therefore, it is not a pure question of conversion from one religion to another. It is a demand for the conversion of all religions into modernity at the same time. Ambedkar's challenge is just this. He did put up a model, but in the very model, if you internally look at the model, the demand is, for theologically oriented, it's a metanoia. You convert. You don't have to go from Hinduism to this one to that one and so on and so forth. You could if you want, but that's not the basic demand. The basic demand is all religions will have to recast themselves, reconstitute themselves in modernity, encompassing and embedding this what we call humanism, social rationality. There is a lot of implications of all these kind of things, but then we'll see it in a question discussion time. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Rajkumar Hans, who is currently a fellow at the Indian Institute of Advanced Study in Simla and reader in history at the MS University of Baroda. He's born to a Dalit Christian family of rural Punjab, and in the late 1970s, a doctoral fellowship moved him from Punjab to Gujarat, where he began research in the economic history of South Gujarat in the 19th century. Rajkumar Hans has been engaged in a comparative study of Punjabi and Gujarati cultures for the last 20 years, with a focus on the Dalit perspective in recent years. So, Dr. Hans?
Friends, I'm very grateful to the Institute for inviting me to present my findings and some perspective with you this morning. And I'm especially thankful to Joel for his persistence to have me here. You see, from some theoretical underpinnings, now we move to the empirical reality, and religion has been very central to the Indian society, to the Indian mind. And I look into what had been the status of caste and untouchability among Sikhs, because Sikh religion was a very powerful counter to the Brahmanical hierarchical social thinking and order. And I think what I will do is a longish paper which I will try to first, you see, to offer some idea to what the Punjab landscape had been. Punjab as a frontier society, as a corridor to the Indian subcontinent, had always been in flux. It was a frontier society. It was never had some kind of fixed ideas and social orders and so on. So, and its landscape is also very is a wide plains, unlike the mountainous regions and so on. And that landscape had also made the mindscape of Punjabi mindscape very independent of in nature, and nothing could really have something fixed ideas and so on. I will begin with, as far as Sikhism is concerned, with one quote from McAuliffe, who was a very close student of Sikhism, and this is in 1903, what he said about Hinduism and Sikhism in that context. He says, Truly wonderful are the strength and vitality of Hinduism. It is like the boa constrictor of the Indian forest. When a petty enemy appears to worry it, it winds round its opponent, crushes it in its folds, and finally causes it to disappear in its capacious interior. Hinduism has embraced Sikhism in its folds. The still comparatively young religion is making a vigorous struggle for life, but its ultimate destruction it is apprehended, inevitable without state support. Notwithstanding the Sikh Guru's powerful denunciation of Brahmins, secular Sikhs now rarely do anything without their assistance. So that is around the close of the 19th century what has happened to such a powerful move in Punjab, what Brahmanism could do to any egalitarian powerful social movement. So I will now go back to the context of Sikhism, the context in which Sikhism arose as a new religion. And I think that context for the subcontinent is very, very important because moving away from the Eurocentric readings of the past, if we can really think of the Indian Renaissance in a very different way, because what was happening in the 14th century or 15th century, there was powerful current of liberational thoughts, and where Sufi saints, where Bhagats were trying to have, you see, the egalitarian thoughts altogether. And this is the context in which Sikhism also strike, you see, roots in Punjab. Now, this is the context which could be seen as the Indian Renaissance, where all these Sufi saints and sons who are trying to counter, you see, provide a counterculture in terms of not only thought but also the social ordering. Now, it also, in a way, can be seen as the beginning of the modernity. Quite often, modernity is linked up again in Eurocentric way, only seen in either in the late 18th century or in the 19th century. But with these kind of liberational thoughts, one can see that there was, you see, modernity, Indian modernity striking roots in the subcontinent. So ideas and philosophy of liberation of Sikhism is also very inclusive, because I think is the only Guru Granth Sahib which was canonized in 1604 is the only, perhaps the only sacred text in the entire world which is very inclusive, because it doesn't only contain the you see, the thoughts of and Sikh Gurus, 5 Sikh Gurus, but also 26 other, you see, Sufis and saints. And this is what also makes it what Aloysius was pointing out, that is secular and sacred. There was almost enmeshing of the two, that it was creating a space. Guru Nanak, who was a great traveler, he was gathering, you see, all these thoughts from all over, not only India, but also going abroad, and he was in Makkah and so on. So this context of, you see, this opening up of a very different, new thoughts around liberation and democratic auras, that's very important for. And I've gone through most the Guru Granth Sahib and the original texts in Punjabi, and what we find is that the way it was democratization of society was being, you see, attempts were being made by the Gurus, and it's not only at the level of thought, but in practice what the Sikh Guru was trying to do. These the ideas of Sangat, Pangat and Langar, where people belonging to different castes and communities could sit together, they were eat together and so on. And so much so that even the distinction between the guru and disciples were being somewhat done away with. So this is a complete democratization of the society was being tried out. And with the formation of Khalsa, with the 10th Guru, the distinction between the Guru and the disciple was also completely being merged. So there is a that concept of Ape Gur Chela. So Guru also becomes Chela. As no, this really empowered the society in such a way that there was the casteism, even if the caste could not be done away with, but casteist attitude that had come to really be destroyed by the Sikh Gurus. And moreover, this is very, very, it's exemplified in one. A large number of Dalits got integrated into the Sikh movement in the 16th century itself, and it's exemplified by one of the Dalit family. I'm talking of Bhai Jaita, who belonged to a Dalit family, and he was the person responsible who had carried the sweared head of ninth Guru from Delhi, Chandni Chowk to Anandpur Sahib, and he was the one whose family had been part of a Sikh movement for nearly 5 generations. And his father, Sadanand, was an accomplished musician and one who was living in Delhi. And one of the daughter of another accomplished Brahmin magician had fallen in love with Sadanand, and on her insistence of this daughter, Lajwanti, the Brahmins that had agreed to give his daughter to him, but there was uproar among the Brahmins. This Brahmin family belonged to Aligarh, and once the Guru came to know it, Sadanand became very close to Guru Tegh Bahadur, and Guru Tegh Bahadur finally, got him married, convinced the Brahmin, and then this family had been all along, very close to the Guru family, and his another son, this was Bhai Jaita, was the first son of Sadanand. And another son was born in Patna while Guru was on his entourage to Assam and so on. Now, what I'm trying to say by bringing out this family is that once he had brought the sweared head of the Guru Tegh Bahadur to Guru Gobind Singh, he was embraced by Guru Gobind Singh and had said that Rangrete Guru ke bete, that Dalits are the true sons of the Gurus. And so much so that along with, he was also pronounced as the 5th son of the Guru himself. Guru had 4 sons, and he was declared as the 5th Sahibjada. Now this is such a large number of Dalits had joined the Sikh religion that during Banda Bahadur's after Guru Gobind Singh's death, Banda Bahadur was dispatched to Punjab, and it was the large number of Dalits who had joined the armies of Banda Bahadur. And I have used some of the Persian sources that how it was for nearly 7 years there was rule of, lower caste and Dalits in Punjab. So it's not only in the first half of the 18th century, but throughout the 18th century, there was another, you see, when there was persecution by the Mughals, and there were several attacks by Ahmad Shah Abdali in Sikhs in Punjab in the 18th century. When the Sikhs reconversed from these in the mid 18th century, they were divided into 5 separate fighting dals, and one of the dals was purely constituted of the Dalits, and so much so that you see, the caste distinctions had come to somewhat, you see, abolished among Sikhs, that with the rise of the Jats, who were also who were the Shudras of the earlier times, they also emerged as powerful caste community in the 18th century. And once that was happening, they tried to eliminate, you see, Dalit, the rise of the Dalits in Bir Singh Rangreta, and they got him killed in 1761 or so. And so much so that the Dalits came to be integrated into the Sikh religion in such a way that in Amritsar, the Golden Temple, there were several kind of rest places called bungas, and one of the rest places was also constructed by the Dalits within the Golden Temple complex in 1826. It is only after the establishment of the British, the Ranjit Singh's rule by the Sikh power, that the casteism again came to be introduced by the large number of Brahmins who had joined not only the order of Sikhs, but also the armies of, the administration of Ranjit Singh. So this had, by the close of the 19th century, the idols had also been introduced into the Golden Temple complex, and almost the Mahants came to control all the Gurdwaras, the Brahmin Mahants, and with the resurgence of the revival of the Sikh militancy, that is Singh Sabha movement, and even there, you see, the Majbi Singhs, the Dalits, played a very, very central role in the revival of the fundamentals of Sikhism, where untouchability was questioned, and the casteism came to be encountered. Even in the pillar of the Singh Sabha movement was also Dalit, Gyani Dat Singh. And thereafter, the Sikhs had to launch a very long struggle of liberation of Gurdwaras from the control of the Brahmin Mahants. And that had continued to be the story till the mid-20th century. And it's now only that the untouchability and caste, which had been done away with, for the first 300 years of Sikh religion, it came to be reintroduced, and it came to afflict the body politic of Sikhs by the end of the 19th century in such a way that there was this danger that was expressed by not only by the external kind of observers like McAuliffe and other people, but also internally it was felt, and even Khushwant Singh came to observe it in the by the mid-20th century, that if in such a way, if Sikhism continued to be Brahminized, there is a danger that by the end of the 20th century, Sikhism would altogether it will be over, you see. And I will end my, you see, this thought with one of the, now there is so much questioning by the Dalit intellectuals that I was talking to one of the Dalit intellectuals who had written a history of the Dalits Sikhs. I was talking to him that what is this future of Sikhism and what is the future of Dalits in Sikhism. And he was saying that it's only the Dalits who can save, you see, the Sikh religion from extinction, because they had been the most loyal followers of the Sikhs, and they had got the Sikhism's its political rule in the 18th century, and while you see they had been made to they if the Dalits had you see not been loyal to Sikhism, they would it would have been very different kind of story for the Sikhism at all. So I think I will stop this. It would have been better if I were reading, but I think I've lost.
Our third speaker is Nate Roberts, who is a PhD in anthropology from Columbia, and he is now a visiting scholar in the Department of South Asia Studies at the University of Pennsylvania. He has been working with Dalit slum dwellers in urban South India, and his research has focused on an ongoing conversion movement in which roughly half the slum's women have become Pentecostal Christians. His current project reapproaches the topic of conversion in India, this time focusing on the national elite by examining the political and theoretical stakes in efforts by Hindu majoritarians to outlaw religious conversion, especially conversions by Dalit women who seek to leave Hinduism for Islam or Christianity. Nate?
Thank you, Gauri. The title of this paper is Pentecostal Conversion and Dalit Utopia. Historically, in the articulation of Dalit consciousness, there's a tension between Dalit identity and casteless identity. I'm reading from the prompt given to panelists, to which I'm responding. How does the Dalit project of conversion out of Brahminical traditions articulate with the project of reconstructing an indigenous past? I want to pause on that word indigenous because I'll come back to it. Okay, so historically there has been a tension between Dalit identity and casteless identity because a paramount goal among those who describe themselves as Dalit has been the ultimate eradication of the structures, political, economic, as well as cultural, that serve to set them apart. And yet in organizing around this name, it is alleged that they are in fact continuing to set themselves apart from others, although this of course depends on how Dalit is defined and how the term is used in practice. However, the risk that theirs will become yet another identitarian movement, jostling for position, policing its own members, and seeking to advance their interests against others is a real one, and one, moreover, that is well recognized by Dalit intellectuals. In describing this as a risk, I do not mean to imply any kind of value judgment. One could argue that for Dalits to establish themselves as a permanent interest group in the Indian scene makes a lot of sense politically, and that there's nothing inherently wrong with an historically dominated subpopulation opting for such an approach. Such a state of affairs is a risk only in relation to the utopian goal in which all vestiges of caste discrimination are eradicated. This utopianism is most famously associated with Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, for whom mobilization around Dalit identity was a necessary but temporary strategy, the final goal of which was the dissolution of the category Dalit. Dalit, after all, is not an ethnic identity to be celebrated, but an affliction to be overcome. A similarly utopian understanding of the term Dalit can be found in the writings of many contemporary theorists of the Dalit question, two of whom, because they're with us here today, I will focus on. The first is Gopal Guru, who envisions Dalit as comprising not only caste, but also, quote, class and gender dimensions, and furthermore as being fundamentally distinct from the categories of state patronage, such as SC, or of electoral politics, such as majority and minority, as posited by, quote, certain Bahujan leaders. What Dalit in fact means Apart from its negative relation to elite designations, be they those of the state or reformists like Gandhi, is, according to Guru, essentially unfixed and not opposed to such categories as subaltern, Bahujan, Buddhist, or proletarian. The second thinker I will mention, Gajendra Nayature, similarly describes Dalitization as incorporating gender parity, dignity of labor, horizontal division of labor, heterodox interpretation of socio-religious values, and so on. And furthermore, denies that Dalit is, quote, a category of exclusivism, sectarianism marked by a vindictiveness against caste Hindus. To see Dalit in exclusivist terms is simply a misunderstanding, according to Gajendran, a false image he attributes primarily to the paranoia of caste Hindus and other privileged groups, although he admits that such an image is shared by some Dalits as well. What Gajendran and Gopal Guru are describing, I submit, is not an identity at all, but a transformative project, and one that is, in Gajendran's words, liberatory, not merely of self, but of other as well. Instead of accepting an iron curtain, Gajendran continues, the concept of Dalitness, quote, calls for caste Hindus to shed their inhumane existence and assume subject positions within the humane values of the marginalized cultures. Therefore, any sectarian organization of Dalit Bahujans is antithetical to the very principle of this category. Rather, it provides a chance for the aggressors to redeem themselves. It provides a chance for the aggressors to redeem themselves. I find this phrase, and in particular the use of the term redemption, highly significant. But before proceeding to my own argument, I would like to point out one small gap in Gajendran's account as well as in Gopal Guru's. Both show a tendency to identify the other of Dalit as the caste Hindu. But if Dalit really is to incorporate plural forms of subalternity, including gender, the aggressors, whom Dalit calls upon to redeem themselves, cannot be just caste Hindus, but must include exploiters of all stripes, landowners, imperialists, moneylenders, and dowry takers, to name just a few. Of equal significance, it must include caste Christians. In South India, where my own research is focused, caste divisions are no less significant among Christians than among Hindus. My research assistant was a Dalit from a village in which all the Dalits were Roman Catholic. And so too were all members of the dominant caste, who beat and exploited them, prevented them from acquiring land, forbade their funeral processions from using public roads, and so on. All multi-caste denominations of Christianity, moreover, are dominated by caste Christians who, no less than their Hindu counterparts, actively favor their own caste folk and seek to exclude Dalits from any form of institutional benefits whenever possible. By treating caste as an essentially Hindu problem, and that only accidentally obtains among non-Hindus, moreover, we are unwittingly reproducing the logic of the state that codes caste as Hindu by excluding Christian and Muslim Dalits from the list of scheduled castes, as well as the logic of Hindu reformists like Gandhi, who for historically related reasons, insisted that caste was a problem of Hindus and Hindus alone. But it is beyond the scope of my paper to dwell on any further on this aporia. Instead, what I would like to consider is how widespread the utopian vision Gajendran and Gopal Guru attribute to the term Dalit in fact is. And I will argue that the utopianism they articulate is not at all confined to a select few theorists. But as my own ethnographic research in a Dalit slum in northern Chennai reveals, is emphatically embraced by ordinary, impoverished, and often wholly unlettered Dalits as well, most of whom have little or no actual knowledge of Ambedkar's thought and do not ordinarily use the term Dalit. These slum dwellers do not, however, reject the term Dalit, as do many middle-class Dalits, who, according to Guru, view it as, quote, regressive, derogatory, and hence undesirable. Rather, it is simply that it remains for them a foreign loanword and not part of their daily usage. The term they most commonly use to describe themselves, especially when distinguishing themselves from the dominant caste society, is simply the poor, yere. Non-slum dwellers or caste people, for the two are substantially one and the same, so far as slum dwellers are concerned, are referred to as the privileged, vasadi udayavanga, or the rich, panakaranga. When used in this sense, the poor and the privileged refer not to scalar positions, but to a social relation between opposed categories of persons. There is no sliding scale between poverty and privileged. The poor are poor because of the rich. Specifically, they are poor because the rich monopolize resources, economic, political, and symbolic, at the expense of and to the exclusion of the poor, and justify their actions by claiming, falsely, that the poor are inherently unworthy. In this way, the discourse of the slum encompasses both what we refer to as class and caste. It also encompasses the unequal gendered relations between men and women. For within the slum, women as a class are said to be poor, or the poor, in relation to men. Slum dwellers make no attempt to justify this inequality. Both men and women subscribe in principle to an egalitarian gender ideology. It is just that their ideals, in this case, more often than not, are honored in the breach. One arena in which these understandings are most clearly articulated is in the discourse of slum Pentecostal churches. The 30 or more small, locally based and locally led Pentecostal congregations that have sprung up in Vyasapati, a large industrial slum in northern Chennai, over the past 2 decades. In what follows, I will provide examples extracted from Pentecostal sermons. My purpose is to read them systematically for the aspirations they encode. I am not, in other words, recommending Pentecostalism as a viable program of social or political advancement for slum dwellers. At the same time, I can think of no reason to oppose it that does not implicitly draw on indigenous narratives. In the first extract I will read, please notice that poor does not signify merely lacking in money, but also degraded, in the sense of having been degraded by others. Of equal significance is the transvaluation of values the pastor performs, by which what is wrongfully treated as worthless is revealed, in fact, to be of great value. Quote, he lifts the poor from the dusty garbage and raises them from their misery. Who are the poor he is raising from the dust? What do we call garbage? What is of no use is garbage. But now, did you see it on television? From waste they have made electricity. Did you know that? From garbage, they're going to produce electricity. That which they deem useless, unwanted, rotten, they are using this waste today in the name of Christ for electricity. The villagers, and the term he uses is gramatar, a term which refers specifically to the residents of the caste village, the ur, as opposed to the Dalit hamlet or cheri. The gramatar, everybody, they will know. Today they are saying, he is not useful for anything. Instead of living here, he should go elsewhere. They say, you are a shameful man. Your life is worthless. You earn nothing for your family. You have not a single paisa. What are you living for? Die. Assuming you to be dirt, they throw you away. But to you, Jesus says, give me your voice, your suffering, your heart to me. I will make you invaluable. I will make you respected. Those who said you are a disgrace, Christ will disgrace them. In this way, the discourse of slum Pentecostal Christianity mirrors and amplifies the pervading discourse of the slum as a whole. As in the latter, what is at issue is not just symbolic degradation, being treated like dirt, or even just spatial segregation, being forced literally to live apart in a dumping ground, but economic subordination. The revolution slum Pentecostals envision is also of an entirely worldly sort. Thus, in another passage, the pastor explains God's program thus. Quote, he wants to create a human court. That is why he made God in man in God's image. But how does this emphasis on retribution compare with Gajendran's argument that the concept Dalit does not involve any vindictiveness towards caste Hindus? In 2 ways, I argue, that despite its longing for worldly justice and punishment of the aggressors, the discourse of slum Pentecostalism is not a vindictive one with respect to caste Hindus. First, those who will be punished are not caste Hindus, but caste people. And even then, from context, it is clear that what is condemned is not the fact they happen to be born into caste society, but the act of maintaining and reproducing caste privilege by degrading others and making them poor. Nor do Pentecostals ever say that Hindus as such will be punished. According to the Pentecostals of the slum, worshipping Hindu gods is not a sin, but merely an error, in that they are totally ineffective. Hindu gods themselves are not figured as evil or diabolical beings who encourage inhuman practices, but mere non-entities. Secondly, the salvation that slum Pentecostals seek is open to everyone, not just the poor and the oppressed, and moreover, according to them, according to them, everyone actually needs salvation. It is just that those with whose worldly privilege is based on the suffering of others typically fail to realize this fact. And to be saved, the privileged need only cease to lord over others. Thus, just as with the category Dalit, which Gajendran argues calls upon the dominant to shed their inhumane existence and provides a chance for the aggressors to redeem themselves, so too with slum Pentecostalism. Thus far I have discussed how slum Pentecostalism speaks to slum dwellers as caste and class subjects. What is perhaps more prominent in the discourse of the slum church is the extent to which it addresses gendered forms of suffering. And it is no accident that upwards of 90% of Pentecostals in the slum are women. This may come as a surprise to those who, on the basis of North American experience, associate Pentecostalism with patriarchal gender norms. Consider next the surprising gloss one pastor put on the story of Adam and Eve in a sermon addressed primarily to the men of his congregation. What did Eve do? She called to him, "Adam, Adam, taste this fruit. It's very sweet. It's wonderful. My eyes were opened. You should try it too." She said this and gave the fruit to Adam. Adam tasted it. Why? Because for Adam, Mrs. Adam's words were very sweet. He ate it, and his eyes were opened. Hallelujah! To listen to one's wife's words is important. The man should think and come to his own conclusions, but only after listening to his wife. A wife is not a slave. You must listen to her. If you keep shaking your head to everything she says, we will all be ruined. In a world where women are normally held responsible for household tasks and judged harshly for any shortcoming in this domain, another pastor addressed the women of his congregation thus, quote, "Those of you who are attracted by the Holy Spirit, you will be saved. And when you are saved, you will no longer be trapped by matters of the family. You will not be overly concerned with looking after your children. About your household tasks, you will say, 'I don't care. There's no need for that.' Flatly contravening received norms in which a woman's worth is tied up with her role as an auspicious, quote-unquote, keeper of the household, in other words, Pentecostal women are presented with a vision of salvation in which the household doesn't even figure. About your household tasks, you will say, 'I don't care.' These are shocking and even revolutionary words. Another aspect of auspiciousness is the emphasis it places on women's physical beauty and ornamentation. This too is attacked by slum Pentecostalism. The revolution against beauty, however, is not envisioned as something new, but as a return to the past, an ancient path, quote-unquote, that is simultaneously the only livable future. Quote, "Clap your hands, hallelujah. We must look to the good path and walk the good way. We must stand on this ancient path. You need not use outward aids to make yourself beautiful, such as the way you do your hair or jewelry you put on or the dresses you wear. For your beauty is your true inner self, the ageless beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is the greatest value in God's sight. What is indestructible beauty? Knowing the ancient path and following it. That is indestructible beauty." Or as one Pentecostal woman cried out in the middle of church, "Jesus is with me. I am different. I am in everything, O Father. I am myself. I am myself. I am different. I am myself." The ancient path is figured as an indigenous one in that it represents the true nature and authentic past of Dalits, and yet does not partake of a national imaginary in which indigenous is categorically opposed to foreign. Thus, in illustrating what the ancient path entailed, the pastor quoted above proceeded to describe it as encompassing the modern West, positing me, an American anthropologist, as an exemplar. The ancient path, what is it? Look at Robert sitting here. Do you know what he and his family do? I asked him what the husband and wife do in New York, America, and he told me what they do is they cook together. The chore of cooking, the husband and wife do it together. And then I asked him what they cook. Do you know what he told me? Beef. The fact that of all the foods I had told the pastor we cook in my house, the one he chose to highlight to his congregation was beef is by no means accidental. In doing so, the pastor wove together the ancient, the quintessentially Dalit, and what is in fact most modern and egalitarian as being all of a piece. This is a common feature of slum Pentecostal discourse. As I mentioned above, the designation the poor refers not just to caste and class subjects, but also to slum women in relation to slum men. The semantic ambiguities these semantic ambiguities are used to great effect by slum pastors, and a great many times the salvation promised in slum sermons is phrased in ways that render the distinctions among caste, class, and gender suffering meaningless. A speech that begins by clearly referring to slum dwellers' collective suffering in relation to the non-slum or caste society often morphs imperceptibly into a tirade against the suffering of slum women in relation to slum men, and back again, such that one is left with the impression that they all are just different aspects of a larger totality known as sin. Now, in interpreting slum Pentecostalism discourse this way, I'm treating the Dalits of the slum as Dalit intellectuals. And what I'm saying here is that the fact that they use a single term to encompass both caste and class, it's not I called it a semantic ambiguity, but actually I think it's a theoretically productive move. So in medieval European philosophy, there's something called a distinction between distinctio realis and distinctio rationalis. Distinctio realis is a distinction that exists in reality, say between a bronze sphere and a marble cube. They're two different things. Whereas the distinction between this cube itself being bronze and it being a sphere, this bronze sphere being bronze and it being a sphere, that's a distinction that exists within rationality. What the scholastics didn't say or didn't add is that rationality is not singular, there are multiple rationalities. So the rationality which describes the same person as a Dalit or a caste subject and as a class subject is a distinction of rationality with a particular valence and effect. One that by necessity draws upon, stock tropes of the poor Brahmin, so in order to say they're also poor, or the rich Dalit. But of course not all, 1 minute, it'll be less than 1 minute. Not all rationalities are the same, not all rationalities work to the same effect. And so my suggestion is that in fact, the discourse they used to describe themselves as poor, which is encompassing these things, isn't just conflating distinctions which are real. It is refusing distinctions which are made by a particular rationality in favor of a separateness or an identity that is real between Dalits as caste subjects and as class subjects. Thank you.
Our last speaker is Masood Alam Falahi, who is an assistant professor of Islamic studies at Maulana Azad National Urdu University. He's published numerous articles and research papers, and his book, which has gone into its second edition, is called Muslims and Casteism in India. He is currently finishing his second book on the reality of caste in marriage in the Muslim world. And so, Dr. Falahi?
Thanks the Southeastern, very thanks to Southeastern Department to organize this kind of conference, and a lot of thanks to Brother Joel to bringing me and Sabina Madam to informing me all information about the conference. My paper have three aspects. As the student of Sharia literature and Arabic language, I will discuss about what is the position of caste in Islam. Secondly, what is the historical background, and in present time, what is the fact and what is the existence of caste among Muslims. As I read many books on caste among Muslims, done by sociologists and anthropologists, they have studied about society, but rarely someone raise a question about the caste among Islams and about writings of ulamas, means Islamic scholars. First of all, we have to know what is the reality in Islam. What is the caste reality? As Quran and Prophet's tradition, we know that in Islam, no distinction between one caste and another caste. The Quranic verses, Allah says in one verse in Surah Hujurat, "O the people, I created you from a man and male or female, and made you in people and tribes, that you know and other and among you the best is one who is doing good deeds. The last sermon of Prophet Muhammad said, there is no superiority of Arab on non-Arabs, no superiority of non-Arabs on Arab, no superiority of black on white, no superiority of white on black. All people are from Adam, and Adam was created from clay. The thing is that this kind of things in Islam, how can caste system came in Muslim society? As you know, our pre-Islamic history, that Arab society have a social stratification. Arab consider themselves high. Among Arab, Quraysh consider themselves so much higher than others. But after Islam, all things made as haram. But we know the Quran says the founder of caste system and caste-based discrimination is Satan, whose Arabic name and Quranic name is Iblis. When Allah created Adam and ordered angels and jinns to bow down in front of Adam just for respect, all of them done except Satan. Allah asked, why you didn't do? The Quranic verse said, Satan argued, "Khalaqtani min nar wa khalaqtu min teen." You created me from fire and you created him from clay. The nature of fire is go to up and nature of clay go to down. How can a high position people can bow down in front of low people? In Islamic Quranic teachings, that founder of casteism and caste system is Satan. After Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and till second Caliph Omar, I didn't see any caste system among Muslim caste with discrimination. But in third Caliph period, third Caliph is Uthman. One person name is Abdullah ibn Saba, converted in Islam, and he started caste-based discrimination. And the present after Islam, when Islam came, after that, among Muslims, Abdullah ibn Saba is the founder of caste system, and his thought spread in Iran like a wildfire, and people came from Iran and killed Uthman, and they said that Ali is the cousin of a prophet and he belongs to the Banu Hashim, so he is more desirable than Uthman to be a caliph. And after many periods, we see caste-based discrimination among Arabs and non-Arabs became more stronger. In Umayyad period, we can see there is a group in Iran named Shaubiya, who compare themselves that they are better than Islamic teachings and others. And in reflect of these things, Arab also have discrimination with them. Hajjaj bin Yusuf, the most famous governor of Iraq, ordered in Kufa that no non-Arab can be led a prayer. In Abbasi period have root, the establishment of Abbasi period root in caste-based discrimination, because Abbasi period, I'm just using the Arabic, Persian, Urdu, most references in my paper, Arabic, Persian and Urdu. So whatever I give references from these books only. The Abbasi period have root up in caste system. Abu Muslim Khurasani, who was the most companion of this caliphate, he started the superiority of Ahle Bayt. Ahle Bayt means in Indian context Sayyids. Sayyid is the higher, he is the Ahle Bayt, he is the family of Prophet Muhammad, so they should be the caliph. And we can see that after that the Abbasi rulers came, and the same period they are fighting between Abbasid and Fatimites, means Ahl Bayt. They are blaming, no, we are superior, they blaming, no, we are superior. And we just about the Indian context, how in India caste system started. Till 995, the Arab rule was on Sindh. we didn't find any caste-based discrimination in Arabic and Urdu literature that period have this kind of things. But even Muhammad Ghauri, Ghaznavi, and Qutbuddin Aibak, in these periods we didn't find. And these people, Qutbuddin Aibak, Qutbuddin Aibak, Muhammad Ghauri, and Mahmud Ghaznavi, they made their slave the governor. Even Qutbuddin Aibak married his daughter with Shamsuddin Iltutmish, who is a slave of Qutbuddin Aibak. But the caste system among Muslims in India is started by Shamsuddin Iltutmish, who is the slave, not slave, slave of slave. Means Qutbuddin Aibak was slave of Muhammad Ghauri and Shamsuddin Iltutmish was slave of Qutbuddin Aibak. From there we can find historically a lot of examples of caste-based discrimination. Shamsuddin Iltutmish, Ghiyasuddin Balwan have an inquiry about the caste of his officials, and he dismissed one time 33 low caste Muslims from his kingdom. How the low caste people can be governor and on any position. Even Ghiyasuddin Balwan, he used to say, when I see any low caste, my blood used to boil. We can find these examples in the Barni book, Tarikh-e-Firoz Shahi. Now after that, the Irani influence among Indian Muslims are so much. So we can see the many books in Iran written by like Nasruddin Tusi, Akhlaq-e-Nasiri. A second book, the Jami Mufidi. The third writer is Nizamul Mulk. In his Siyasatnama, he told the caste system should be like period Islam. And because of these things, we can find till now in Iran, there is a seeing example that it is a Sayyid family. Their turban is black, and non-Sayyid's turban is white and other color. Non-Sayyid cannot wear a black turban. And this is not only in Iran, in Egypt, also in India also. We can see. We can see many examples in the Mughal period and Sultanate period, in Firoz Shah Tughlaq period, caste-based discrimination among Muslims are on a high position. And even Akbar is called so much secular among Indian historians, and I think in general the world historians. He ordered his order in Persian version. In we can find this Badayuni book, Muntahu Tawarik. He said, "Arazil ra az khadne ilm dar shahr mana aind ke fasad ha az qawmi khizad." The so-called low caste people should not allow to get education, because their education, the fasad, corruption will born. The occurs between. And he one time one Sayyid rebelled against Akbar, but he didn't allow to kill him because he was Sayyid. You can see the Sikandar Lodi period. A Sayyid of Koel, he was accused because he have some still some government money. But when he brought in front of the Sikandar Lodi, he given pardon. He told, okay, you can take these things, this money also, because you are Sayyid. And after these historical events, we come that Aurangzeb and Bahadur Shah Zafar. These are also, till now, Bahadur Shah Zafar is the last Mughal emperor who was in so much trouble, but still he used to say, in our army should be only Sayyid, Sheikh, Pathan castes, who are the upper caste, no lower castes. Aurangzeb is not different from others. He is considered most religious person among Muslim scholars in India and in Arab also, as I know about Arabic literature. But he also did caste discrimination. In his period, one fatwa books, Fatawa Hindiya, compiled. In this book, we can find many caste-based discrimination among Muslims, and he said this caste low, this caste high. After that, we have to come about Muslim scholars. what is the Muslim scholars' views about the caste among Muslims? In general, we can find that from Sultanate period till now, the Muslim scholars supported caste system among Muslims. In the period of Muhammad Tughlaq and Firuz Shah Tughlaq, the court historian of both periods, Barni, he wrote a Fatawa Jahadari, and his book also the Tarikh Firuz Shahi. You can find many caste discrimination writings and fatwas, means rules of kingship. He told no lower caste could be allowed to get education, and if a teacher can do, he should be punished. He also said, to give education low caste people is like to put a necklace of pearl and gold in the neck of swine and dog. And he just not his thought. He arguing from Quran and traditions, but we never find this kind of teaching in Islam. Islam is totally against of these teachings. Islam said, "Talabul ilme farizatun ala kulli muslimin muslimatin." The gaining education is compulsory for all Muslims, male and female. We have to come in the period of Firuz Shah Tughlaq. There is one person, name is a very famous person till now. He is also Sufi. Name is Jahan Caste. Sayyid Jalaluddin Jahan Caste. He has same ideas. Even he told that Prophet said, we cannot eat with 10 peoples like barbar, washerman, and others. And he argued from hadith, but not any teaching in Islam. In the period of last Aurangzeb, one person born, name is Shahullah Dehlavi. He is the most respectful person from all Muslim sects, but he also have caste discrimination and fatwas. Now, in contemporary India, we have 4 major groups in India, like Barelvis, Ahle Hadith, Devandis, and Jamaat Islami. And among them, Ahle Hadith, and it is called in Wahhabi in English term, and Jamaat Islami, they are considered more secular and more arguing. They have argued that we are doing rationalized, we have rational people, but in their own founders, like Maulana Maududi, Jamaat Islami founder, and you can go to the Ahl Hadith founder, Nazir Hussain Dehlavi. They all have caste discrimination fatwas, and they have given fatwas. If a Sayyid caste girl marry with non-Sayyid boys, this kind of marriage will not be valid. It is invalid automatically. No need to break in court and anywhere. But Mullah Ashraf Thanvi, the most respected person in Deoband, he said, yes, sir. A Sayyid can marry with a non-Sayyid, but other cannot marry. But if he marry a non-Sayyid girl and a child born, his status is not like the Sayyid, original Sayyid. Like Manu Smriti said, Brahmin can marry with other caste girl, but his position is lower than original Sayyid boy. And the most important thing that Sayyid Ahmad Khan, the father of Muslim education in India, he is not different others. He used to abuse lower caste Muslims. He said that 1857 revolt is not by others, only weavers and lower caste people. And we can come to the reservation Dalit Muslims struggle. We never find that any moment launched during 50 and 60 before independent India and till now. Abdul Qayyum Ansari, his movement is not like for all OBC, Dalits and Muslims, Dalit Muslims, just for one caste, weavers. This is called Mumin and Julahas in Urdu and Arabic language. But in contemporary India, there are 3 and 4 groups working on this way. One is the All India Backward Muslim Morcha, name is changed now, All India Muslim Morcha. And second is All India Pasmada Muslim Mahaz, And third is Akhil Maharashtra Khatik Samaj. Fourth is Indian Dalit Muslim Voice. But above both of them missed their route and joined hand with political parties. And both others are doing for the upliftment of Dalit Muslims. And I hope they will reach their goal. Thanks a lot for listening to me.